You know, the great Australian dream? That idea of owning your own home? Well, for so many of us, it feels completely broken. And the reasons we're always given for why it's broken, well, they're probably just plain wrong. For millions, that dream feels further away than ever. So in this explainer, we're going to tear down the common myths about the housing crisis and find out what's really going on. Okay, let's just start with one number, 40%. That's the percentage of Australian households right now that are in what's called housing stress. That means 4 in 10 homes are struggling with costs. And that stress, it directly hits their health, their work, and their ability to make good decisions. We're talking about a crisis on a massive scale here.
We're always told the same things, right? Oh, it's just a simple supply and demand problem, or it's the free market doing its thing. But here's the thing. What if those reasons we hear all the time are just myths? Convenient stories that actually stop us from figuring out what's really going on and finding real solutions.
So that 40%, it's not just a statistic, right? Behind that number, there's a huge human cost. This isn't just about economics. It's a story of daily anxiety. It's the kind of stress that puts a massive strain on relationships, it impacts the mental health of parents, and it creates real instability for kids' education. For a huge chunk of our population, the dream has become a nightmare.
So have a look at this. We can basically break down everyone's housing experience into 4 camps, and you're probably in one of them. Camp 1, that's the investor, busy growing a portfolio. Camp 2 knows there's a problem, but, isn't personally affected. But camps 3 and 4, that's where that 40% live. They're either feeling the immense pressure of rising costs, or they're already in a full-blown crisis. When so many people are living with that constant worry, we just can't expect to see the best from our society.
All right, let's get right into it and tackle the biggest myth of them all, the one you hear constantly from politicians and developers. This idea that we simply don't have enough houses. Yeah, this is the headline you see everywhere, right? It's treated like a fact carved in stone. And the solution seems so simple, just build more houses. But when you actually dig into the numbers, a totally different story starts to emerge. 1 million. Just let that sink in for a second. That's roughly how many homes are sitting completely empty, vacant, in Australia right now. For decades, our housing vacancy rate has hovered around 10%. And on top of that, the average home that is occupied has at least one spare empty bedroom. So this whole idea that we have a physical shortage of housing, it just doesn't add up.
You see, the problem isn't that we don't have enough houses. It's something else. And this quote, man, it just nails it. The real problem is that our system has become comfortable with a level of disadvantage that lets a million homes sit empty while millions of people are struggling. It's not a supply problem. It's a distribution problem.
Okay, so if it's not a supply issue, what about the market itself? This brings us to myth number 2, the idea that housing is just this pure, free market, and we should just, let it do its thing. But the truth is, it's anything but free. I mean, a free market? Seriously? Just take a look at this list of government interventions. You've got grants for first-time buyers. You've got massive tax breaks like negative gearing, which lets investors write off property losses against their other income. The government is constantly pulling these levers, and all these taxpayer-funded programs completely warp the market. So if it's not really a free market for buyers, who's really in charge here? Well, the answer is pretty simple: finance. The sheer scale of our major banks is just staggering, and their influence basically dictates the rules for the entire system. And here's a perfect example of how the system is not designed for you, the home buyer. It's called lender's mortgage insurance, or LMI. If you have a smaller deposit, you pay a hefty premium for it. But if you can't make your payments, who does that insurance protect? Not you. It protects the multi-billion-dollar bank from any loss. So you are literally paying to insure their risk. It's wild. And this power, this focus on risk, it actually dictates the kind of homes that get built. A bank valuation doesn't give a toss about innovation or clever design for a family or sustainability. All it cares about is what it can easily compare to past sales data so they can sell it off quickly if you default. This whole process actively punishes building better, more creative homes because they don't fit into a simple, comparable box. Okay, so we've got a system where finance calls all the shots. But surely the construction industry itself is a well-oiled machine, right? Well, that brings us to myth number 3, the idea that it's an efficient industry. In reality, it's kind of chaotic.
To see just how broken it is, let's just follow the story of one single trade, a letterbox installer. He gets an urgent job, but when he shows up, the site isn't even ready. He comes back a week later, does the work, and sends the invoice. But it gets rejected. Why? Turns out another trade drove a truck over his work. And in the end, he has to offer a free replacement just to get paid for the job he already did. It's a complete mess.
So why on earth is it like this? Why is it so fragmented? It really boils down to two main reasons. The head contractor thinks it gives them tax advantages, and it means they can just offload the management headache of coordinating all the small jobs. Now notice what's missing there. Yeah, any benefit whatsoever to you, the homeowner, in terms of speed, cost, or quality. And this mess, this fragmentation, it starts from day one. Get this. Before anyone even picks up a shovel for a new home, there are already over 14 separate companies and entities involved. You've got surveyors, engineers, multiple insurers, council planners, and they all have their own separate commercial interests.
Okay, so if the big problems aren't a supply shortage, or a free market, or an inefficient industry, then what is going on? And maybe, just maybe, the solution isn't what we've been told either. It might be time to completely rethink what the Great Australian Dream is even about.
We can actually get to the heart of it by asking a really simple chain of why questions. Let's start here. Housing is too expensive. Okay, but why is that a problem? Well, because I can't afford a decent place to live. And why does that matter? Because that constant worry, that stress, it leads to distress. And when you're distressed, you don't make great decisions. Now, why is that a problem for everyone else? Because when 40% of households are in that state, it becomes a problem for all of us. People who feel unstable and excluded are way less likely to contribute to society in a positive way. It's a collective crisis. So what's the antidote to all this stress and disconnection? Well, it might be something we've been overlooking in the whole housing debate: community. We're in the middle of a global loneliness epidemic. The U.S. Surgeon General found that being lonely can be as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And the only real cure for that is genuine human connection. And community isn't some fuzzy, abstract idea. It's real, tangible stuff. It's neighbors who actually know each other's names. It's sharing fruit from a tree on the nature strip. It's a spontaneous game of cricket breaking out in the street. It's knowing you can rely on the people around you. That's what a thriving society looks like. And that brings us to the final big question, the one that could change everything. We've seen a system driven by distorted finance and sheer inefficiency. But what if we changed the goal? What if we started building for community first, not just for profit? What would the Great Australian Dream really look like then?